Сайн байцгаана уу хүнд үзэгчтэй. Өнөөдөр ороо манай дефактоны төлөвийн зочноор Блүүмберг Европын редактор Дэйвид Твийд оролцож байна.
Дэйвид Твийд Блүүмберг телевизийн Европ хариуцсан редактор. Өнгөрсөн 3 жилийн хугацаанд Европын өрийн хямралыг дагнан сурвалжилсан. Энэ хүрээнд Итали, Португалийн төр засгийн өндөр албан тушаалтнууд болон олон улсын санхүүгийн байгууллагуудын удирдах албан тушаалтнуудтай уулзсан ярилцлага авсан. 1997 оноос хойш Блүүмберг телевизэд ажиллаж байгаа. Парис, Лондон, Сиднэй, Токио дахь салбарт ажиллаж байсан. Мельбурний их сургуулийг худалдааны бакалавр зэрэгтээ төгссөн.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
What brought you this time to Mongolia?
Oh, I'm doing a trip actually across Siberia and Mongolia. We're going by train, we're going by van, and we're looking at these two countries which have got sort of similar issues to deal with because they've got masses of natural resources. They have to work out how to extract those how to exploit those national resources, and at the same time they've got to also manage a relationship with a very big neighbour in the south. And what I'm doing is I'm going around meeting people. We're not going to just talk about natural resources. I'm putting a television program together and I'm going around and meeting people, I'm meeting businessmen, and we're looking at how these two regions are developing.
So you have done another program with Russia last year or so.
That's right.
You have been exploring what really challenges are today in Russia and today now in Mongolia, right?
And when I did the program on Russia last year, we crossed Russia on the Siberian Express, and we looked much more at big businesses and we looked much more at the bigger macroeconomic picture. This time, what we're going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at what's the small guy doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been here in Mongolia, and we've been talking to people like the rapper. Talking to him about what his concerns are for Mongolia, and we've been talking to the sumo wrestling champion.
That's for sure.
Absolutely. He took us to a private circus performance, and we're talking to you.
What is, in general, first impression about Mongolia? Certainly it's a mining country. You came here to
Yeah, but that wasn't my impression, actually, because I came by van from Ulan-Ude in Russia. And we're crossing the steppe from Ulan-Ude, and we come down to that border crossing, which takes 3 hours to get through. And you're on the same steppe. It's the same land, but just to look at it, just is completely different the way that it's used. For example, in Russia, you don't see much in the way of agriculture or herding going on. And as soon as you come into Mongolia, you see the gears, you see cattle, you see sheep, you see goats, you see men on horseback, you see that the land is being used, and that was my first impression. And then of course
northern part of Mongolia is the only place most suitable for agriculture, cultivation of land. That's why you see a lot of activities nowadays. And you also have seen a lot of horses, I understand, here.
We went to the gathering, the Guinness Book of Records. I think it's the Mongolian Federation of Horse Trainers who put this extremely interesting and magnificent, really, 10,000 or in fact, I think it was 11,150 or something like that. They broke the record. But you know what? It made the hairs go up on my skin just to watch these horsemen coming in.
Okay.
And they'd come from so far away and they were so proud.
Well, I don't know it is the smartest way of spending certain money on that at the time when we have a sort of economic downturn, and you see that. So talking about this economic downturn, you have been reporting about European government debts, in particular in Greece. Please tell us about how it started and why you have been reporting that.
The debt crisis, yeah. Well, I moved from Tokyo to London in 2009, and in the middle of the year.
Both with Bloomberg?
With Bloomberg, yeah. I switched from being a writing reporter and I became a TV reporter. And in December we saw the downgrade of Greece's debt by Fitch. And that a couple of hours after that downgrade headline went, I was heading to the airport, and in the morning I was standing in front of the Acropolis reporting on what was the beginning of the Greek debt crisis.
What was really the very, very base of that Greek crisis?
The basis of the crisis, you know, it's a story about a government which is overspending, which is spending more than it has in revenue. And Greece is a very special situation because on the revenue side you had rampant tax evasion, and on the expenditure side you have a situation where you have an enormous bureaucracy which has been put into place by various political parties over the years, and the government couldn't afford to pay those civil servants and many of the other things that were in place.
That means you said just a bureaucracy, not professional bureaucracy much. And then whenever they change political system or political parties to rule the country, they were adding on people, replacing the previous ones.
This is a system of political patronage. It was put into place in the mid-1970s, and each time a new party would come in, either you had PASOK on the left or you had New Democracy on the right. Each time those new parties would come in, they would give their followers, their supporters, jobs. And so you had a situation where you've got people have been given jobs in the bureaucracy who have no qualifications whatsoever.
See, when we talk about a little bit, we have oversights of the government in terms of Greece. Can you tell us some measurement?
Well,
how big was the government?
Okay. The National Bank of Greece, the Greek Central Bank, when I was there back in 2009, had around about, and the numbers 3,500 employees.
Okay.
The Bank of England, in an economy many times the size of Greece, about 1,000 employees, and the Bank of England sets its own interest rates, own monetary policy. So this just gives you a sense of the enormity of how stuffed full of bureaucrats.
And I remember there was also news about the railway system there, and many other transportation system, which is also overspending.
The transport system, yes, you see overspending there, you see overspending in the ports, you see inefficiency in government-owned businesses, which is why the European Union, the European Central Bank, the IMF, which is known as the Troika, the one that puts into place the programs, is insisting on certain privatizations.
You said about the government state-owned enterprise inefficiency. What kind of companies, state-owned companies, are there, and how do you see their inefficiency?
Well, I think you've got everything from they're trying to sell off the one of the gambling monopolies at the moment. They're also selling off the national the gas operator, and what they're hoping to do is to introduce more competition into these industries where they're working. But also they're going to have to look very closely at who's employed in these companies and to work out what their productivity is and make tough decisions. And that's what they're looking to do.
There was recently news about that they shut down the public broadcasting system for overnight or so.
No, they've shut down the public broadcasting system.
Does it work now, or is it under
no, it's not.
name?
It's closed. It's closed, but it did cause a lot of protest. I think it's interesting because I'm not a Greek speaker myself, so I never had a way of gauging the quality of what was coming from that broadcaster. But there are two sides to this argument, and one is that this broadcaster was not producing material of extremely high quality. But on the other hand, there is the argument, but you can't close down your state broadcaster because the media is so important in a functioning democracy. But it went ahead, and the broadcaster has been closed down.
You see, you talked about the size of the government, and then state-owned enterprise inefficiency, and a deficit because people were not paying taxes, and certainly there should be more and more deficit, which was financed by government debt. How did it go? What was the mechanism? It's like government bonds on the international market, or what was the major source of that?
So the Greek government was issuing, had market access at this stage, and the Greek government was issuing government debt on international financial markets. But at the same, and so then what happened was, after the downgrade, and suddenly the focus of the world was on Greece's finances, and we saw that its budget deficit was way bigger than anybody ever forecast, and the government actually admitted that it had this problem. Then the government started to lose access to the market, and that was when the concern was that Greece would either default, and if it was to default, would its currency leave the European, the single European currency, the euro? And it was at that stage when it became apparent that Greece needed help from its euro partners.
Yeah, and it's another debt, another large debt, no?
Well, what has happened now is that the European partners have stepped in, and they're acting to finance the government as the government as a private investors used to fund the government, except with a proviso, because before the private investors had no way of imposing any sort of conditions on what Greece needed to do. But what's happening now is that and it's known as the Troika. This is the IMF, the European Commission, and the European Central Bank. They are acting really as the private market. They're providing the funds to keep the government ticking over in Greece, to pay the salaries of their workers, but they are requiring in return that Greece meets certain conditions in its program.
And how are they doing now?
They didn't do so well in the first few years of their program, but they're beginning to make this new government, which has been elected and is led by Antonis Samaras, they're beginning to make progress, but they're making progress in areas which are fairly easy, like increasing taxes and cutting expenditures on services, but they haven't really tackled the main issue, and that is a bloated bureaucracy. And they're lagging behind on their privatization program.
Does it make now Greek economy more competitive?
Yes, we've seen unit labour costs falling in Greece, and in the period when Greece was entered the euro, that 10 years, unit labour costs in Greece rose, while in Germany, the most successful economy right now in Europe, unit labour costs were flat or slightly higher over the same period.
Okay, David, we have heard something which could be very interesting for Mongolians. Is it true that initially the huge amount of debt was not written in a government balance, state balance, as a debt or some different under certain other names?
I think you're referring to a situation where an investment bank gave some advice to the Greek government to set up some particular derivatives trades so that the Greek government could falsify the size of its debt as a percentage of GDP in order to enter the euro in the first place. The government simply didn't provide accurate information.
Yes, in a way it was sort of the new government had not received the right information from the previous government.
Well, this went from one government to the other, to the other, to the other.
For years, quite some
because
time.
It was New Democracy who was in charge just before Papandreou, who was leader of the Socialist PASOK group, came in 2009 and revealed the big budget deficit. Now that New Democracy is back in power.
Well, that's something which is good about democracy. They discovered the wrongdoing and now are ready to address.
Well, they discovered the wrongdoing, they announced the wrongdoing. Suddenly they found themselves locked out of the markets and they had to turn to their European partners.
One day sooner or later it was going to happen anyway.
One of the things I think is interesting is because if the very fact that they're in the euro means that they can't just devalue their currency, it means they do have to tackle these long-term structural issues that need to be tackled. Bureaucracy, the judiciary, making the judiciary more efficient. You know, in Greece they don't even have a land registry. People don't know who owns what land in some of the rural areas.
Wow.
So that this is making, you can imagine
but
how
being a
difficult
member of European Union, they could have done it much earlier.
one always needs an incentive to make those sorts of difficult political decisions. And if you can find an easy way out, like, for example, devaluing your currency, and that provides a little bit of extra time, then politicians tend to go for the easy option.
Speaking about devaluing currency, in this case, a euro, in Greece, how a country can devalue their currency, because it's a part of big ocean, how you will devalue that?
Well, you can't devalue the currency, and that's exactly the point. Exactly. The only way that you can manage this is what they call an internal devaluation. And that is where you see wages going down, prices going down. Yes. For example, it used to be one of the most expensive places in Europe to buy a cup of coffee in Athens.
Was it?
It used to cost about €3.50, or even €4 if you're sitting on Syntagma Square, which you've seen on the television, I'm sure, in front of the Parliament. Well, the price of coffee is going down. The price of holidaying in Greece is going down. The unit labour costs are falling. And it's because of that price, this internal devaluation, which is making Greece more competitive again. And we're beginning to see things like Hewlett-Packard is going to set up a logistics centre in the port of Paris, which is just outside Athens. So you're beginning to see this movement in the economy after quite a very, very difficult restructure process.
They were even talking about Greece taking out from the Eurozone, remember?
Well, this was the speculation that was always around. And I think that speculation sort of came through the prism of the Anglo-Saxon press. Because there were many people at the time saying, look, Greece can solve its problems. It comes out of the euro, its currency devalues, its exports become more competitive, revenues go up, the budget deficit's fixed. But the thing is, the damage that might have done to the country defaulting on its debts, the potential contagion to other countries in Europe, the situation with Greek banks that hold assets denominated in euros, businesses that having contracts in Germany suddenly would be unable to honour those contracts with a devalued drachma. So the difficulty that it would have been very painful, and at the same time, they would never have dealt with the real structural issues that needed to be dealt with in the country.
But the same thing was happening in Spain and Portugal, and altogether, still the wave is there, or the danger is gone?
But you know what? These are countries that have got real structural difficulties that have been ignored by politicians for years. In Italy, for example, Italy has had no growth for the last 10 years at least. Silvio Berlusconi, the Prime Minister there, did nothing in terms of reforming the country, did nothing in terms of making economy
work better. How such a mature democracy, like compared to Mongolia, Italy, can allow things go like this for that long?
Italy has got a problem with corruption. Italy has a problem with bureaucracy. Italy has got problems with vested interests, which are protecting their industry. So whereas you've got a country like Germany, where everything's more or less squeaky cleaner, not saying it's perfect, but you've got an extremely efficient export industry. You've got unit labour costs which have been fairly stable. Compared with Italy, you've got unit labour costs which have been rising, and you have a bureaucracy which is bound up in red tape.
Here we are coming close to some issues we have in Mongolia. Now the unit price for labor, you said. Now the government tend to increase government officials' salary, and yet our productivity is not changing. Does it look similar?
Well, the unit labour cost that I'm referring to in the European Union, which we saw rising in the periphery, I'm talking about manufacturing costs. I'm not talking about the wages of bureaucrats. And you know what? I think that there's an argument that bureaucrats should be well paid, because you need your best people running your governments, because they need to execute. One of the issues in Greece,
we talk about quality of institutions.
Is the quality of institutions, is the fact that they were unable to execute what they agreed to
jobs,
with the Troika when they put the program into place.
So speaking about that, how do you find the strength of Europe today?
Well, we're going into the second quarter GDP. Well, the numbers will be out soon. It'll be probably history by the time. But we see a slow recovery taking place in Europe, which might speed in the second half of the year, but make no mistake, it's going to be slow. I talk about an improvement in Greece, but this is a country which has got a record unemployment.
Yes.
It has got a GDP which has been decimated over the last year. It's been through a depression, and it's going to be difficult to come out of it.
Almost 30%.
And we still don't see exactly how we're going to get out of it. So, you know, I'm telling a story about a country which is going through structural change, but we still haven't got out of it yet.
Yep. How do you find now? You are living in Berlin, right? Based in Berlin.
I moved to Berlin in May, and the reason why I moved to Berlin in May, because when I started, I was based in London in 2009, but I've spent my time following this story, not from Greece, but to Portugal, to Spain, to Italy, to Berlin, to Brussels, everywhere. We wanted to put someone who's responsible for Europe on the continent, and what's happened is that Berlin has become the indisputed political capital of Europe. This is where the decisions are made. France has lost its way. You have a leader in France, the president of France, who is the most unpopular president going this far into the opinion polls. He's been there a couple of years, François Hollande.
Yes.
And so he's in a weak position. And this is why Angela Merkel has gained such
And now, along with the German economy, is doing better.
The German economy is doing better. I mean, the German economy, we're expecting once again to see quite a strong rebound in the second half of the year. We're sitting a domestic pickup in domestic demand. Unemployment is at a record low. Or is it a 2-decade low? Sorry, maybe it's not a record, but it's unemployment is low, especially compared with elsewhere, and at the same time. But the only problem that the German economy may face is a slowdown in China and the emerging markets. So yes, you know, we're a truly globalized world now.
With that, would you please brief a little bit about Bloomberg? What is this about? I mean, we know we have Bloomberg Mongolia TV.
Right.
Happy to see now the international name working on our market. Please describe in few words Bloomberg.
Well, Bloomberg is a financial data provider. We provide information which we have our Bloomberg screens, and our clients are generally traders or fund managers or people who are involved in finance.
All around the world.
Company executives. All around the world. We're completely international. And as well as, and this is our core business, and on top of that core business, we have a media business. We've got more than 3,000 reporters in bureaus all around the world. And those reporters are writing about the markets that we're providing data on. Stock market in Australia, the bond market in Singapore, the commodities market in China, energy markets, currency markets, equity markets. Those reporters are writing that, and then on top of that we also have Bloomberg Television, which I'm part of. Bloomberg Television is obviously a very... People see Bloomberg Television,
yes, it's
and
all
they
around
think that's
the
what
world
we're all
too.
about, but actually we're really about providing financial data to our clients.
So that's what is a good discovery for many Mongolians, because you are in a data collection business.
Yes.
David, you are by training and by your education a journalist.
I am.
Yes, and which school you have made?
Well, I went to, I actually studied at Melbourne University. I did a degree.
So you're Australian?
I'm an Aussie. I'm from Melbourne, yeah.
Okay.
I did a degree in commerce. Part of my degree was economics, but I'm no economist. I'm a reporter. I studied I got a cadetship job on the Melbourne Herald, and then I became the resources writer on the Australian, and then I decided to move to Paris because I just thought that would be exciting.
And you also were working in Japan, as you said.
And then with Bloomberg, I've been with Bloomberg since 1997. I worked with them in Paris and Brussels and London. in Sydney, and then I ran our Asian economics coverage out of Japan for 4 years, and that was the job I had immediately before I moved to
What the
to
principal
London.
difference to you between a reporter and reporter or journalist?
Well, a reporter is a journalist.
Just the same, two different words of the one profession.
I think one's just a bit fancy.
Okay. Speaking about to be fancy and reporter, I mean, how important is the independence of media?
The independence of media is vital. It's vital. It's vital for any functioning democracy. But it's also vital for a functioning media outlet. A functioning media outlet needs to be independent.
So, for example, for many countries, in particular former communist countries, including Mongolia, media is owned by a particular business group or particular political group. How to make a separate and how to make sure that we have also enjoy that fully independent media?
Because you have to have an owner, as we do, who will stand totally away from the news, who understands that the integrity of the news can have no influence, that the owner or some outside force can have no influence on the integrity.
How to make sure
of the news.
that it happens at every step?
Do you know? Well, you have to put into place an institution that functions right the way up with a solid chain of command. Let me give you a little example about what we do at Bloomberg. Sometimes you might read that such and such a source, an unidentified source, says that one company is going to make a takeover offer for the other one. Now, at Bloomberg, we might have a story like that, but we will make sure that that source on one side of the transaction has been matched by another source on the other side of the transaction. The names of those sources will go to our managing editors, and we will not publish anything until all of that information has been corroborated, which increases the reliability of everything that you read on Bloomberg. We don't report about rumour, we report the facts.
So in media business, on one side you check everything, make sure your sources are compared, check it. On the other side you have to be very quick.
Yes. So sometimes you miss out on a story because you're absolutely double checking your sources. But it's better to be correct than to be wrong, because the minute that you're wrong, you're damaging your brand.
I see.
The minute that someone perceives that there's been some outside influence into one of your stories, you're damaging your brand.
So there were similar this sort of cases before.
Well, there have always been cases of incorrect stories going out from other media institutions.
You cannot check everything in life.
But at Bloomberg, we check everything. Everything.
Bloomberg Mongolia. Tell us about that.
Well, Bloomberg Mongolia Television, it's an affiliate channel. We have affiliate channels around the world. We have Bloomberg Turkey, we've got Bloomberg Ukraine. This is a new business that we're starting. Bloomberg will give its brand and some content to a local station, and we'll put someone in place, and we'll make sure that the local station follows the same integrity as Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg, our company.
Same ethics, everything.
Yes.
And if there is any comparison of content-wise to be provided by local Bloomberg TV or the Bloomberg TV International?
Well, you know what? My focus is usually on Europe and my reporting beat, and I haven't got a big view into how it actually works.
So now you are working on Mongolia, and how many people you think you will outreach with the program about Mongolia after when you end?
Oh wow, that's difficult to say. We are present in something like 350 million households in around Europe. and we will be, so that the program will be going out on our Bloomberg television, and I'm sure that Bloomberg Mongolia might run some of it, and we'll be on the internet, and I'll be tweeting it, and we hope to get as many as possible.
So overall, you're going to give the factual, realistic picture of Mongolia today in terms of businesses, opportunities we have, and the challenges we have to mostly the business community in the world.
To the business community, but not just the business community, actually. We have quite a few viewers who aren't necessarily traders, and this is a sort of program that could appeal very broadly to many of other people who are interested in, just interested in what's going on in these countries.
Okay, I hope it will be a good contribution towards knowledge of foreign direct investors who possibly will come to Mongolia. My last question to you, David, is what does it take to be a journalist? What is the most important characteristics, if you may say, to be truly independent journalists?
My first boss, I got my first job because I called my first boss for 6 weeks, twice a week, saying, have you decided, have you decided? In the end he gave in because I was persistent. He said, I think persistence is a good thing in a journalist. Persistence, curiosity, integrity, independence. Well, working for a great organization.
That's a great features, I hope. Many Mongolian journalists will remember and do, and one day they will be working on such a large network like a Bloomberg, like you. David, thank you very much for coming to my show, and all the best with your Mongolian rest of the program.
Thank you very much.
And all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.